Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. All right, this is the first that we've done in the Color Mixing course and challenge since its inception, is working exclusively with black. And I wanted to cover off more than just black paint. I'm going to talk about the different brands and stuff like that. But I wanted to cover off, tube black, fluid black, black gesso, the different types and what you can do with it. So what I have in front of me, I've got Decor Traditions Carbon Black. And then I have Dark Gray Value 3, 6, and 8. I have the Fluid Acrylics Carbon Black. And I just have the different bottle here. This is just basically to hold all this stuff together. Then I have the Traditions Black Gesso. I have Deco Art Chalky Gesso. Then I've got titanium white to hold all this together, and then the Traditions white gesso, which goes with this, just to hold it together. Because on the palette, what I did is I have the Traditions Carbon Black, the 3 values with white. I didn't bother using the fluid acrylics because it's no different. And then this one here is the Traditions Black Gesso with the Traditions White Gesso. This is the Deco Art Chalky Gesso with the Deco Art White Chalky Gesso, which is over here. We're just kind of running out of room. So when it comes to black, pure black, single pigment black, PBK7 black, it's a black. But black, some of the blacks kind of shift on the color wheel. Carbon black tends to shift a little bit more towards blue. There's ivory black, there's Mars black, there's bone black. There's all these different types from different brands. The reason why I don't have all those different blacks is because I rarely use black as is. I make chromatic black, which we're going to cover off in the next lesson. Now, Deco Art also has, and all brands do, they have their, the grays. You don't need to do this. I just want to show you the values. And then the differences with the gessos. Can you substitute black paint with gesso? Because a lot of times I'll do a painting with a black canvas, so that's where these come in place. Where the Traditions Black Gesso is matte, a bit more on the satin side though, where the Chalky Gesso has that chalk finish. So let's go here. We'll start right off the bat. These two I'm doing first. Carbon Black. What's the first thing you observe with this? What do you observe? Pop quiz number 1. What do you observe with that swatch of paint? Now I'm going to add white. Okay. I'm going to add more white. You're really not going to get to fully appreciate black until we do the next lesson. I'm going to add more white. I'm going to blot the brush a little bit. Let's get a real shift there. Okay. Go. Okay, so you can see that it definitely leans towards blue on the color wheel. If you want to do something that was a bit more towards orange, you could go with an ivory black. If you really want to look up the history, find out, do a Google search how ivory black was manufactured. Do a Google search how bone black was manufactured. That'll give you some kicks and giggles. All right, so now dark gray. So now, if you wanted to do this, you can. I make up my own to create dark values. If you do a lot of monochrome painting, black, gray, and white, and then you do oil glazes or acrylic glazes, it might be in your best interest to actually buy the stuff already created in the values. That way it's consistent every single time. You don't need to. You can make it up yourself, but sometimes it comes in handy. The numbering sequence that Deco Art uses for the bottles is opposite to what I do. So they've got their darkest gray valued 3. I would value that higher because there's more black in it. Okay. Medium is fine at 6, but light gray, they have it at 8, where to me it'd be like a 1. Okay. I like my value numbers lower the lighter the paint, the value numbers higher the darker the paint. That's just the way that I do it. But that doesn't matter. All I'm going to reference to is to dark, medium, and light gray. So their dark gray is this one here. You can see it's very close to this. It's the exact same pigment, PBK7 and the white. It's exactly the same. Now take a little bit of white to even lighten it up a bit more. Let's go down right about here. I don't know if I matched that exactly. You really won't know what if you match it exactly until you add, until it dries. That one I think is a little bit light. This is just more to show a point that you really don't need to buy the stuff already mixed. Then the medium gray, and this is the original, these are the original bottles. I've only gotten these bottles and I haven't replaced them because that's how little I use them. I use them for teaching color theory. We'll add some white. So do you observe anything with what's going on here? Like, have you noticed anything different? This can go right here. There's one specific property of the paint which really is the only reason why I would use a carbon black. I've mentioned it a few times during our lessons. Oh, too much water in my brush. That would go straight down here. So that one's there. The medium gray is right here. Is that the medium gray? Oh no, it's a little bit darker than, a little bit lighter. I can even just pick it up without cleaning my brush. The dark gray. So comparing to the value scale, carbon black, added a bit of white is equal to the dark gray. Add more white to carbon black equals medium gray. Add more white to the carbon black equals a light gray. See, you don't really need to buy these. But what it does show you is how much it leans towards blue on the color wheel. So now let's try with the gesso. Oh, and I forgot to write the rest. So if we use gesso, I think I just got paint on me. So we're using gesso for the idea of, yeah, we're going to underpaint the canvas for this, because that's the purpose of gesso. And water just flew right off my brush. The purpose of gesso is to underpaint because it creates that tooth. Let's add some white. So a property to look at for the gesso, is it thinner or thicker? What's the finish like? I'll let that dry. Actually, I'm going to add a little bit more white to that. Let's go down a little bit more. Let's make this fair. Ooh, too much water in my brush. Try that again. Okay, what color is that? Right there. Okay, blot my brush, pick up more white. Trying to finish off the value scale to be equivalent to this. All right. And then the Chalky Gesso. Oh, let me just do it here. Okay, the Chalky Gesso is a lot more fluid. A lot more fluid. Okay, let's add some white. Not as strong in tinting strength. So that tells me that there's less pigment in the Chalky Gesso. Let's try to adjust that a little bit to make it the same. Doesn't take much. Here we go. Doesn't take much. Go a little bit lighter. That's probably down here. And it's good that I'm having to adjust the mixes, because that way you get to see how to make your adjustments. I know a lot of you want your mixes to be perfect right off the bat, but that's actually the wrong way of doing it. You want to be able to have to force you to make adjustments. That way you'll learn what to do. I would rather see you make 10 mistakes than get it perfect the first time, because now you have 10 opportunities to fix it, to take what you've learned and apply. Okay, so I still have to wait for that to dry a little bit. Let me just add another, I had too much water in there. I'm going to put a second layer here, but to be fair, because, you know, to test the transparency, let me just put another one here, because I had too much water in my brush there. So this one here, I blotted my brush. There we go. Let's see what we get there. So what I had written down on the side here was an exercise that we're going to do. So we obviously see, that everything here leans towards blue. If I had to make a judgment call, not knowing what pigment was in the Traditions gesso and the Chalky Gesso, without even knowing, because they have proprietary formulas. Okay, all manufacturers do. I would say PBK7 is the pigment in all these mixes, because it leans towards blue. That's just my observation. But what happens if I want to make a canvas, I want to tint it, and I want to tint it with a different color? I don't want to go out and buy Mars black or ivory black or bone black or every other black that you have under the sun. Okay, there are all these black paints that shift one way on the color wheel. Why should I buy that particular black if I can make it myself, right? We're going to cover that off in chromatic black, in the chromatic black lesson, which is coming up next. But just a real quickie, real quickie. We already know that this leans towards blue, but what kind of blue? This leans towards a blue that's on the violet side. What if we wanted to lean it towards a blue that was on the green side? What would we use? Phthalo blue. If we wanted a black that leans towards green, what would we use? Well, what kind of green? Do you want the black that leans towards green on the yellow side or on the blue side? Then we use those. Black that leans towards red. What type of red? A red that's orange, a red that's violet, or more of even a red violet? I'm going to pull these out. The violet's here. Sorry. There we go. I jumped ahead. Okay. And even with the violet, you could make it red violet or take ultramarine blue with permanent alizarin crimson, which is my favorite. So you can shift those any way you want. You don't have to buy it already made. You don't have to buy Mars black, ivory black, bone black. You don't have to. Take your carbon black or whatever black that you have and then shift it on the color wheel. But even to that point, in the next lesson, we're going to cover off chromatic black, how to make up your own, because it just means it's just a paint that you don't have to buy. But in saying that, I'm going to put these away. In saying that, your pop quiz question is, if I keep preaching, nah, people, you don't need to have black in your palette. You don't need to have carbon black. You don't have to have two black. If you don't need to have a pure single pigment black in your palette, why do I have it? Never mind all these. If I keep saying you don't have to have a black, you can make up your own black by making it as a chromatic black. If I preach that, then why do I have one in my palette? That's your pop quiz question for you to answer. So what you're going to do is you're going to go over to the community, you're going to post the question, and then you're going to post your answer so I know what you're referring to. You're also going to do your exercise with whatever black you have. Just make sure you write down what it is, the brand, and then what it is. And if there's a color, a pigment number on the back, write that down as well. And it'd be really great if you have one that's something different than PBK7. That way we can see the different shifts based on the color that you have, or the pigment you have, because black and white really aren't colors. They're value shifts. So post your chart. And then, so you've got the pop quiz question as your number 1. You've got to create your chart as number 2. And your third assignment, your bonus assignment, is to take your, well, I guess really, if you have more than one black, I guess pick your favorite. And then make another chart to shift it to green, shift it to red, shift it to violet, and shift it to blue. Opposite to what you have. So if I were to do this exercise, this black here, carbon black, shifts towards blue, I would make another one that shifts towards green. Then create a color chart with 2 greens, 2 reds, and let's say if you had a violet, and then have one where you can take ultramarine blue and permatranslucent crimson and make your own violet. Just to give you some different ways that you can shift it on the color wheel, because this exercise here is a bit of a lean-to into making chromatic black. Alrighty, I'm going to clean up and get ready for that lesson, which is my absolute favorite. So until I see you then, stay inspired.